down and already surpassed the death mark, 100,000 death mark for the country. A very tragic news for everybody. However, the light in the tunnel seems to be near in sight as we started the largest mass vaccination to help fight against COVID-19. PNA UK has been your comrade since the first wave, and we continue to provide support to our fellow colleagues up to the second wave. In 2020, PNA UK celebrated 17 years since its foundation. Up to the second wave, in almost 2 decades, we have built an organization that truly encompasses the voice of Philippine nurses. We have maintained the UK charity status and have been silently involved with nursing matters across different organizations. As we uphold the government advice to stay at home, protect the NHS, and save lives, we did not stop and continue to produce a series of webinars with World Café Convention as the biggest highlight that attracted more than 300 attendees from 25 different countries. Today is another milestone as we embark on the new year, our first webinar for 2021, entitled Building Psychological Resilience Together. To all our attendees from the UK, from the Philippines, and across the globe, welcome. My name is Jan Ariola, and I will be your facilitator for today's event. And together with me is my fellow PNA UK committee member, Tracy Nankil.
Hi everyone, my name is Tracy and I'm one of the hosts today. Thank you, John, for your warm welcome and for highlighting this afternoon's webinar. With my experience in this global crisis on the context of oncology nursing, day by day, there would be new guidelines, revisions in our services in the delivery of our cancer care, and somehow may lead to professional burnout. I believe that this can be a room for reflection and would simply let us realize that you and I are important. That for us to provide our best care for patients, clients, or just simply for others, we must not forget to take care of ourselves.
I can completely relate to that, Tracy. As someone who's also working in the oncology field, we feel how affected most of our patients and colleagues, not only physically, but mentally as well. In order for us to help several issues affecting our own psychological health, today we have three experts from the mental health world to talk about how we can survive this pandemic by looking after our own mental health. Tracy?
I won't keep you long, but just a friendly reminder before we start. Please, can we mute our devices to avoid unnecessary feedbacks and background noises? And if you can type your queries, suggestions in our chat box, there will be a Q&A after our last speaker. Obviously, we have to respect everyone's opinion and alternatively, direct message our host. Most importantly, grab your drinks, coffee, tea, hot chocolates, learn as much as you can for today, sit back and enjoy as this afternoon, we're not wearing our face mask. The COVID pandemic greatly impacted our everyday lives. Not just the classic 2 meters distance rule, we have lived on what we call the new normal, using these PPEs, face shields, masks, and gloves. I'm very pleased to welcome our first speaker, who have been invited for several prestigious events and would share his survey report on emotions behind the mask. He is the head of nursing and quality of psychological medicine and older adult directorate of South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust. He is also an executive advisor in our charitable organization of Filipino Unite. Please join me in welcoming our humble chairperson here in PNA UK, Mr. Oliver Soriano.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you very much for what humbly kind of like recognition. And thank you, John, as well. May I just say good afternoon to all our colleagues here in the UK and good evening to our colleagues in the Philippines. I can see that we've got some colleagues from Pampanga, from Rizal, from Manila, and Batangas. It seems like we're going all different directions, which is something that we are very proud of. So thank you very much. So if I may just actually start sharing my screen with you all.
Why is it important, Jerry Boy?
To keep fighting emergency prevent emergency.
Hi everyone. So I'll be discussing about emotion behind the mask, and this is a work that we have actually started last year. We already know at the moment that the UK Black, Asian, and ethnic minority population has been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In May last year, here in the UK, there was a big news that came out to some of our networks, news networks, identification of Filipino frontline workers suffer highest coronavirus death rate in the UK healthcare system. One of that is also in June last year, this information about Filipino nurses dying due to the pandemic has become a major discussion on international level. And in July last year, BBC News actually reported something about the coronavirus. Filipino health workers need extra protection. And this year, the Royal College of Nursing Bulletin, the Winter 2020 edition, actually spoke about what do Filipino nurses experiencing during this pandemic. It actually highlights that we should not be doing everything on our own, that we should actually collaborate with the people that we work with. And now that we're on the second stage of this pandemic, there is already a dreaded feeling about Filipino nurses' experiences on COVID. As we speak at the moment on my research, it's already been identified that there are more than 850 health and social care workers that died here in the UK and Wales, well, specifically in England and Wales. And fortunately, Filipino healthcare and social care workers has been greatly affected by this. So why did we actually do the emotion behind the mask survey report? In August last year, I was invited by the Philippine Nurses Association in America, specifically the Philippine Nurses Association Central DC, where I actually join in with the group to share the experiences of what we're actually experiencing here in the UK. In their presentation, they actually mentioned something about the work that they're doing. It is actually called Emotion Behind the Mask. With that, we actually thought, why can't we not replicate the work that they've done to study on the why now, what now, and what's the next action that we have to actually put forward into it. The reason that we're doing this Emotion Behind the Mask survey report is to actually learn some lessons of what we can actually step up and identify the actions that we can actually put forward to help ourselves and our colleague Filipino nurses in sharing that outcome. So in identifying next step to support our healthcare workers, not only with the Philippine nurses, but also our BME colleagues, also the wider healthcare colleagues that we work with. I just want to actually acknowledge the presence of our lead researcher for Philippine Nurses Association UK, Ms. Shelito Cañeja, who's actually in the audience today, as she was the one who have led and organized and coordinated this survey report for our association. So if I can actually go straight now with the report that we've got. So we had this survey out in between October, November last year, for which we were able to actually get around 80 respondents. Mostly our respondents are coming from the age 41 to 50-year-old, but we do have either someone from the age 31 and 40. Most of these respondents that we had were registered nurses. We also had one respondent, one of the doctors that we're working with as well. There are a few healthcare associates or healthcare support workers that responded to non-healthcare workers. So one of the questions that's been asked in our survey report is asking if they have had work or involved in any care for COVID-19 patients. Majority, as you can see, have had direct contact or direct care of people who've got COVID-19 in the on that period of time. Some have the direct care with non-COVID-19 patients. Just want to actually identify here as well, because we're talking about or discussing about like who have had direct contact with COVID-19. As you can see, this year it was a memorable moment for Filipino nurses across the UK, but also globally, because it actually highlights the work that Miss May Parson have done to be the first nurse who have administered the first COVID-19 vaccine. Also this year, we had one of our colleagues, Miss Wency Andres, who actually worked at Whittington Hospital, who gave her opinion on the RCN bulletin for December. So the other things that we were asking in our survey report is like, what are the common emotions that define their overall experience during the peak of COVID-19 pandemic last year? So you can see that like most of the people are actually feeling that they are making a big like an important difference to people that they're caring for. Some do feel that they're very resilient, and others are feeling optimistic about the future that they're actually working in the clinical health setting. But majority, I would also say that like people have expressed feeling sad and feeling betrayed due to the death of Filipino nurses that's happening in the UK at that time. So we also ask which emotions best defines their overall status at the time when they were actually completing the survey. As you can see, a lot of our respondents did mention being resilient. I think this is the classic characteristics of Filipino nurses, but mostly by Filipinos themselves, that like we're very resilient on any crisis that we always deal with. Also, most of the respondents did mention about making an important difference to the people that they're working with and feeling confident on the contribution that they're actually doing in handling this situation. Equally, there were all other Filipino healthcare workers who were expressing their nervousness or anxiety or feeling on edge during this during last year's pandemic or that lockdown that we had. The other question that we asked is how worried they were on the impact or the possible impact of coronavirus personally. So majority of people did answer that they're very worried. So what is their biggest worry? They mentioned mostly about their family's safety. Second to that is actually their own safety, especially working in a clinical environment where COVID-19 is actually occurring or potentially occurring. Others were actually expressing their worry about their financial situation for the reason that some of our respondents were actually furloughed or they were actually shielding. They were also actually mentioned about their worry about their children or family, as well as the family and children's emotional well-being. The other things that we have also asked in our survey report is like what is the most effective way that they were using to reduce the stress level that they were encountering with. I think the pandemic have made us learn how to actually socially connect with our colleagues remotely or virtually. Like now, we're actually using Zoom. Others have been using Teams. And then there are some other platforms that people are able to actually engage with others. Some of the things that our colleagues or respondent actually replied to us, like during the pandemic, the way that they dealt with and cope with their stress levels, like they started eating healthily. They also actually start getting information, the right information about the virus and how to actually protect themselves. Other activities are mostly just hobbies that other colleagues are actually doing, like cooking, cleaning or decluttering, working on a certain project at home that they've actually missed doing before, and also doing some indoor exercises. So for the last 6 months, we also asked them to kind of like, what are the different organizations or programs that they've actually accessed? So highlighted a while ago, I mentioned about the virtual and social networking that people are actually using. So majority, as you can see, 40.9% did say that like social networking is the way that they've actually participated a lot. There are some people are using quiz nights. They're also actually using kind of celebration nights. Some people also attended kind of like meditation and meditation program and health and well-being program. So what we did after this, like we don't want to actually do the survey just by getting the numbers. I think what's more important for us as an association, as a voluntary charitable organization, is like we wanted to actually reach to as much as possible many Filipino nurses working in the UK, but also to our colleagues abroad. So what we've started is like we actually actively engage ourselves to the wider Filipino nurses community by ensuring that like we're visual and visible in our social network platform, including Facebook. We now have our own website as well in Twitter. What we also did for the coming, like for the past couple of months now, is like for us to actually engage with new nurses coming from the Philippines as well as from the Middle East. We started doing our webinar. This webinar is what we call an informal onboarding program to actually highlight to the newly arrived nurses about the different activities that they can expect once they arrive in the Philippines. Just last week, we were able to actually provide and facilitate our webinar together with Filipino Unite and Filipino UK nurses. To nurses coming from the Philippines and arriving to Luton and Dunstable and East Sussex. We also had some visitors coming from arriving from Middle East as well. So the way that we're actually facilitating this webinar is to actually ensure our newly arrived nurses on what to expect and how they can actually seek support, because we already know that like coming to a new place is always an anxiety-provoking situation, more so with the current pandemic that we're actually facing. There were also activities that we held with Northwest London or CNWL, as well as from the group from Birmingham and Blackpool. So what now? So what is it that we're actually done for the past couple 6 months or so? Since our inception last year and the engagement that we've done with other networks, so we are now coordinating with the International Nurses Association Diaspora Group, with the leadership of Mr. Duncan Burton, who is the Director of International Nurses Recruitment for NHS. We have already presented to the diaspora group on like what to expect and the activities that we're actually doing in PNA UK. We also had an opportunity to link up with the CNO for the Filipino, for our colleagues who are from the Philippines. CNO means like Chief Nursing Officer. We now have a representative, a Filipino representative in the CNO Black, Asian, and Ethnic Minority Group Strategic Advisory Group by the presence of Ms. Jennifer Cagiao. So we've been liaising with her directly to kind of like voice out our concerns and also help out to give suggestions on how we can actually establish and make it better for our Filipino colleagues. We also started broadening our relationship with Philippine Embassy and other Filipino community networks, most specifically to our colleagues from Filipino Unite and our Tinig UK, which is the newspaper in the UK. The other things that we've been doing is like enhancing our partnership with Filipino UK Nurses Group led by Mr. George. Also, we've done our presentation with the Mary Seacole Trust, supported by one of our esteemed colleague, Mr. J, and also our link with Florence Nightingale Foundation. Since then, we've been increasing our link with the NHS onboarding team. Specifically, we've been able to actually link up with our North London NHS Trust, with our North NCMWL, and also some organization or some NHS that we're actually been linking up with. So what's the next step that we're aiming for after this? So we wish to actually upscale our survey report, and hopefully that we can facilitate a research on Filipino health and social care worker and community well-being. Also, there will be a few more webinars, forums, and conference that Filipino Nurses Association UK will be holding for this coming year. Thus, please watch out for this, because these are ways for us to actually reach out on our wider organization and a wider Filipino community. We will be actively coordinating with partner agencies and professional bodies, including NHS London, NHS England, and NHS Improvement. Also with our partner agencies, our agencies and networks that we're working along with, together with, for example, the British Indian Nurses Association, the Nigerian Nurses Association, and some of the professional nurses association that we're actually coordinating now. The reason that we're doing here is that because we can actually share the lesson learned that we gathered from this research or the survey report that we've done, all the activities that we've started for the past couple of months now. This is our aim to actually share these experiences to our partner International Nurses Diaspora Group. Oops, sorry. And majority of that is like we want to reach out to more Filipino nurses here in the UK, but more so to our Filipino nurses in the Philippines who are actually planning to actually come in the UK. Because I want to actually share to you all that like UK is still a good place to work with, but like with the right support, with the right help and support coming from PNA UK, we can rest assured that like your arrival or your presence here in the UK will be as stable and secure as possible. Thank you very much. And that's my presentation and survey report regarding the emotion behind the mask. Again, I just want to acknowledge the support and the leadership of Ms. Cieleto Cañea, who have actually led and coordinated the survey report for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Oliver, for that very informative presentation regarding the study on emotions behind the mask led by our nurse researcher, Michileto Caneja. 850 lives lost from COVID-19 is a huge number, and they will forever be remembered as our heroes. More than 18% each for being resilient and making a difference, which is very true for us working in the healthcare profession. Our colleagues have also engaged themselves into fitness, into cooking, new hobbies, which are all very helpful in coping in this new normal that we are all living with. And also great achievements for PNA UK so far, and I'm very much looking forward on what's coming next. Before we move on to our next speaker, I would just like to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Jennifer Cagia, the CNO BAME nurse advisor at NHS England and our fellow Filipino nurse. Thank you, Ms. Jen, for joining us. Moving on, our second speaker who will talk about mental health and the pandemic is the interim deputy chairman of PNA UK. He is an advanced nurse practitioner and mental health specialist based in Hastings, East Sussex, a registered general nurse, registered mental health nurse, and also an independent nurse prescriber. He was responsible in setting up, organizing, and sharing the BAME staff network of his previous workplace, which covered the whole of Sussex. He's a proud father and husband who works now at primary care and caters to patients with both mental health and physical health needs. With 20 years of NHS experience, he was awarded the Clinical Excellence for Nursing during the NHS Windrush 70 Awards in 2018. My fellow colleagues, our speaker, Mr. Dennis Simpson.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon's activity. And I would also like to welcome everyone who stayed up late in the Philippines. I know it's like almost 11:30 in the evening there now. So thank you for joining us and staying up late and listening and joining us today. So, and also I would like to thank John for that humbling introduction. And for the next 20 minutes, half an hour or so, I wanted to talk to you about mental health and the pandemic. I'm hoping that, you know, this will just be like a revision for all of us. I'm hoping that I won't have to teach you so many new things today with all of us being professionals here. I'm no and with from what I've seen on social media anyway, majority of these are already being done and um, being used by all a lot of clinicians. But I'm hoping that we can just have use this venue together and talk about it. When I start using my PowerPoint presentation, I'll probably just stop the video so you won't get distracted with me looking from one place to another. Because I have two screens that I'm using concurrently. All right, thank you guys, and let's start the presentation. You able to see the screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you, John. Right. So mental health in the pandemic. Right. Um, it's such a sobering last 11 months, isn't it? The world as we know it, the life that we used to know it has changed and drastically so much in the past 11 months. And although I hear a lot of people saying, this is the new normal, I'm really hoping that we are still hopeful and positive and optimistic that this won't be the normal, that we will have to live our lives and the future. Right, let's talk about mental health. We all know what mental health is, but as a revision, as I said, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities. It's a state of well-being where an individual can cope with normal stresses of life. But just like what I have mentioned earlier, what we are experiencing now isn't normal per se. This is so unusual for all of us. And
Sir Ollie, Sir Dennis, paki-unmute ka.
oh, sorry. Yeah. I don't know which bit I was muted. I ended up being muted. But anyway, with mental health, I was saying earlier, what we are experiencing now isn't normal per se for all of us. Every day on the news, we're always experiencing and seeing something new and positive. The last few months, most especially with December, we were we I was so happy with the vaccine being introduced here in the UK and the rest of other countries. I've luckily received my first dose on Christmas Eve, oh, New Year's Eve, which is a good thing for all of us. Mental health is also a state of well-being where we can work productively and being resilient. And resilient is one of the words that I'd probably keep on mentioning in the next hour or so, or in the next few minutes. Mental health also is a state of well-being where we can make work where we will have the ability to contribute to our community. And thanks to the power of social media, I've seen a lot of how people had been contributing and helping, most especially healthcare workers all over the world. You know, I know that with the amount of PPE that some clinicians have to don so that they can do their everyday tasks at work, they don't always have enough time to go on breaks and get their food and drinks ready. And it's been humbling and really heartwarming to see businesses and private individuals providing clinicians and nurses and doctors with food that they specially prepared. Mental health also includes our psychological, emotional, and social well-being. And in as much as I have always heard people and politicians saying, the 2 meter rule and social distancing, I'm hoping that we can also start thinking about the distances that we have to establish between people as just physical distancing. I think in a way we're also really lucky that this pandemic happened now in 2020, 2021, where we have a lot of the advancements in informational technology, because the internet and world wide web has made our world smaller, and it allows us to still get in touch with people and families during using social media, Microsoft Teams and Zoom. um, Mental health affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, and it also determines how we handle stress and relate to others and make choices. So, why do we need to talk about mental health? Well, we need to do it because I think there had been a lot of focus and emphasis on what the COVID virus does on our physical health. Um, we all know that it involves and attacks all of our organs in our bodies, but we also need to remember that it also affects our mental health. Generally, as humans are social human beings, we thrive on social contact. We enjoy meeting people, we enjoy meeting friends and relatives, and this is something that we haven't been able to do freely and properly in the last 10 or 11 months or so. So we need to raise the awareness on mental health, because we wanted as many people as possible to know and learn that we can improve our mental health, and there are still a lot of ways that we can do so despite us physically distancing from each other. And also, by so doing, we want people to be empowered with tools and knowledge so that we can continue facing the challenges and everything that happens in our lives on a day-to-day basis, most especially with us in the UK who are still on lockdown. And after that, we're hoping that raising the awareness on mental health will make people engage more, act more, and become advocates, and sharing the learnings that people experience when as they go along with their daily lives. This will include, accessing helplines, using self-help information and stuff, talking therapies, and even the use of medication. Because just like what the next slide says, the pandemic is affecting us in so many different ways. Oli mentioned earlier that in England and Wales alone, there had been 850 people who have died who had been working in the NHS and social care workers, which is a really really sobering thought. A few days ago, England also commemorated the milestone of having 100,000 deaths in the UK. And when I check the online today, there's already 104,000 deaths in the UK, and daily we are still faced with all these statistics of at least 27,000, 26,000 dying every day. Pandemic affects us in so many different ways. um I also wanted to say, we're all in the same boat, but we're not in the same boat, but we are in the same storm. We experience and we respond to the pandemic in so many different ways. Affects our mobility, most especially for people who are, we need to um, observe proper lockdown procedures, and even us being able to go out for your regular walks per day, we still need to distance ourselves from other people. It affects our social life, and as I said earlier, we're normally and infinitely and primarily a social um, a human being who thrive on meeting up with friends and families, most especially I think with Filipinos, isn't it? We can always think of something to celebrate para lang magparty, you know. Um, days off, most especially for people who work in the hospitals and work shifts. We even celebrate our days off so that we can meet up with friends and video okay and all that stuff. It The pandemic also changed our routine, which is also difficult for a lot of people. The economy has been affected as well, and I think in a way, with us healthcare workers, it's a good thing that we still have a job. But there are a lot of our friends and families who are affected, who haven't had any income for months, and that's obviously affecting them in so many different ways. Health is affected. I was just talking to one of our PNA colleagues who work in oncology. Cancer treatments are being delayed, and they've had to make difficult decisions every day on who to treat first and how to prioritize people and getting them and allowing people to attend their regular outpatients activities and all that. Stigma and discrimination. I've heard of people being discriminated or being racially attacked because of them coming from the Far East. Sometimes we have also heard about Filipino nurses in the UK also being racially attacked, thinking of the our association with people from the Far East. There's still some people who call the COVID virus, something coming from China, which it did, but it was it's just really sobering for all of us. Resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover or readily regain our normal level of functioning. We all have different ways of adapting and adjusting to all these changes that happen to our everyday lives. I also wanted to mention to you guys Ginsberg's Seven C's of Resilience. He's actually a child development expert, but I thought his Seven C's of Resilience also echoes and is still really applicable to all of us adults. The first one is competence, which is the ability to know how to handle stressful situations effectively. And although, as I said, this is all new to us, I think every day as well, we end up developing new coping mechanisms to allow us to survive what's happening now and to bounce back, I guess. Confidence is the belief in one's own abilities. Connection is having close ties with family, friends, community groups, and faith, which I think for Filipinos is a really good thing because we have always been um, known to have really good attachments with our family and friends, and most especially for those people who work abroad. Where we end up leaving our families at home in the Philippines, we always manage to develop our own new communities and new and bond with our colleagues and friends like they are also our families. The fourth is character, including self-worth, being in touch with our own values, having a caring attitude, strong sense of right and wrong, and being prepared to make contributions to the world and ability to make choices. Contributions, people who contribute learns the powerful lesson that the world is a better place because they are in it. Okay. I think also in the last few months we have also emphasized the bayanihan spirit of the Filipinos, the way we help each other, the way we reach out to friends and families who may or may not be affected directly and indirectly by the COVID virus. And our coping skills, social skills, stress reduction skills. I think we've all been taught this in nursing school as well, anyway, isn't it? And control, which is also having a sense of being able to make decisions and having a choice and being courageous. Coping skills for kids. I think most of us have families of our own. These are some of the things that we also need to emphasize to them. Our kids here in the UK and I think in the Philippines as well have been doing their remote learning, which is also something really new to them, which is also quite difficult for the kids as well because they're still learning, enjoying, and learning skills on communication and social skills. There's so many things that we need to teach them, most especially now. Labeling the feeling, allowing them to feel sad that they don't see their friends anymore, that they don't have any contact with their friends anymore, and some things that we can also try and allow them to break the day really, um, most especially now with information technology and for our kids always facing the computer and or playing games and communicating with their friends online. We need to try and think of ways that they can also do other things with the family or brothers and sisters. Other things that we can do, Um, I think I've also seen a lot of this on social media. Um, the pandemic also allowed us to coin some new words. We hear a lot of people labeling themselves as plantitos, plantitas, plantatais, which is really good because it allows us to do other things apart from focusing on the negative stuff. Um, and we all know how being surrounded by plants also help our environment as well. Doing self-care menu, there's so many things that we can do to break up our day. We've seen a lot of people as well. I think during the first lockdown in the UK, there was a scarcity of baking products because everybody's becoming adept in turning their ovens on and making their own pandesals and everything else. And there's so many things that we can do to break up our day. I know most of us nurses are still functioning and working as per usual, but we can always still break the day. There's also something here that I think is really, really important. Um, Saying no is also a part of self-care. I think there's so many anecdotal evidences that during whenever we were talking to people who were affected by COVID or who died from COVID, there were so many of them who were working multiple shifts and even working extra shifts during their days off because they couldn't say no to their bosses, or whenever they had to go to a different area where they're not used to working, or working in the front line and looking after people with COVID without proper training because they couldn't say no to their boss. So one of the things that we can also think about is being able to say no and not saying or agreeing to everything that people tell us. I think that's also part of our culture as well. Being we wanted to please everyone, so that's something that we also need to learn. Videoke. What's a Filipino party without videoke? That's always part of it, isn't it? So that's also one thing that we can always do so that we can look after ourselves better. Self affirmation is also coming up. Um, you know, we need to motivate ourselves by affirming ourselves as well. After a really hard day's work, and sometimes looking after patients with COVID or any other patients, it can be really exhausting and tiring. But also need to find time to affirm ourselves that we are doing the best we can in this uncertain world and ever changing and dynamic world that we're living at now. So these are just examples of self affirmation that we can tell ourselves and what we can tell each other, really. Helplines for people who are based in the UK. I think this is also something really important and really valued at the moment, and that we should be sharing to our colleagues. Our NHS people has provided healthcare workers a range of support to suit a range of different needs. There's a specific support line for healthcare workers, for nurses, doctors, and support workers that people can ring. I know we can talk to our family and friends about our experiences and our difficulties at work, but sometimes it's also really nice to be able to offload and vent to someone we don't know. Sometimes we don't really want to tell our family and friends how we really, really feel about, or how COVID and the pandemic is affecting us, because we don't want them to worry. So this is the value of helplines, really. And for those people who live in the UK that don't want to talk, you can also use a text frontline service using the number 85258. And just like with what Oli mentioned earlier, there had been a lot of Filipino healthcare workers that died in the UK. I think from the last count, there were about 60 of them who perished since Feb or March last year, which prompted the NHS to organize a bereavement and trauma support line specifically for Filipino colleagues. Sometimes when we're already feeling really stressed and um, distressed with everything that's going on, you know, it's easier to talk in Filipino. So there's also that resource that you can use. I mean, I have tried ringing this number before just to check what it's like. They actually don't have any Filipino answering the phone straight away, but they can arrange an appointment for you, or they will arrange a call back in a matter of minutes. So please be aware that this service is also available for us here in the UK. Counseling support, there's so many other things as well. I know faith also features so much in our everyday lives as Filipinos. There's also counseling support available from the Association of Christian Counselors, which might be beneficial for some of us. And also for people or for nurses, for Filipino nurses who manage um, different nationalities and healthcare workers, there's also a specific training that allows you to equip yourself and allow you to be a more supportive and caring supervisor or manager to your staff. We also have financial well-being support available that you can access if needed. And I think, despite shops being shut, I think online shopping has still increased, not just in Filipinos. So maybe, if this is something that can help us, we should be able to access it as well. And other numbers that we can use as well on my last slide. This will all be made available on the PNA UK social media accounts. So you can check them out later on. And that's the end of my presentation, Jan.
Thank you very much, Sir Dennis. That's very informative. I'll get Tracy.
Um, Thank you, Jan. Sir Dennis and Sir Oliver, that was an excellent presentation. You both have been amazing for sharing your work and passion altogether. I just agree with Sir Dennis as well. The power of saying no. If you say no to most people, they either can find someone else to say yes and do that and to do that for you and help you, or even solve the problems themselves. Just remember, as Sir Den said, say it a while ago, just be more compassionate to yourself. It has been a few 50 minutes or so since we started. Shall we have a 2 to 3 minute breaks, Jan? We could spend a penny or have a quick drink or coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Hang in there, guys. We'll be back in about a few minutes, and we'll see you then, and we'll just continue from there.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. I think we're back. It's almost around midnight now in the Philippines, and it's almost 4 o'clock here, UK time. I hope everyone is still glued to their seats or in your bed or wherever you are at home. And it's really a good topic at this time to be able to share things regarding our own mental health. Just to remind everyone, if you have any questions, just please post that in the chat box on your side, and then we can answer that later on with our speakers. I'll give back to Tracy.
Thank you, Jen. Um, Again, if you get any questions, feel free to just type in the chat box. I would just like to agree with Sir Ollie's message on below that I he said and he mentioned that time, the importance of time. Time is a good healer, and that's a very good point because you have to keep an eye on how you feel. And like Sir Dens have mentioned through his brilliant presentation, he talked about resilience. And on that point, you have sometimes you don't have to fix everything. You have to pick up on the points that you need to focus on, and that's a start of everything. We begin in small steps.
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully everyone's still all right. We can stretch our arms and everything. And because this pandemic really isn't really easy for everybody, it really intensified the issues of Black, Asian, minority, ethnic inequalities. Some of the issues are exposed in social medias. There are a lot of unnecessary anxieties, and I guess there are also a lot of loss of opportunities, and that's why in our country, in the Philippines, there are prison nurses, as we acknowledge them in our Twitter accounts, and we try to help them here and support them in Philippine Nurses Association. I also like to follow on what Sir Dens said about self affirmation. That was really, really beautiful. And as he has mentioned, we are on the same storm, but we are not on the same boat. And your comments, slideshows, and your self care plans were exactly the words I needed to see as well and hear right now. This morning, by the way, I'd like to share with you, I attended a virtual mass, a Filipino mass, and I was reminded to be careful on how I look towards others and for myself. Sorry about that. In line with the power of mindfulness, we have our third lovely guest today to share her vast knowledge and expertise of mental health and wellness in the importance of self-care. She is a consultant clinical psychologist, program manager for psychology and psychotherapy. I'm honored to present to you Dr. Helen Winter.
Thank you for such a warm introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen and then we'll get going. Okay, hopefully you can see that okay. So yes, thank you for the warm welcome. So my name is Helen. I am a consultant clinical psychologist at South London and Maudsley. And I was invited here today to talk to you about how you might look after yourself during a pandemic. And I think it's really helpfully building on some really brilliant ideas that have been shared already by Dennis. So thank you for that. And hopefully we can kind of build on those solid foundations. And you'll also hear me sort of alluding to some things that really echo the information that Oliver's brought today as well. So I'll go through the slides. I'm more than happy for people to ask questions if they want to as we go along, or at the end, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so what do we know? So we know that COVID-19, this is something that's been emphasised a lot already. We know that COVID-19 has really changed the way that we're living and working, and also the way that we're being asked to provide care in our workplaces. Sadly, it's also revealed and exacerbated existing health inequalities, as well as failings in our health and care systems. But from the outset of the pandemic, it's also been evident that Black and minority Asian ethnic communities are at increased risk of contracting and dying from COVID-19. And the data has shown this even more acutely amongst our Philippine nursing colleagues. Indeed, our Filipino colleagues have had a dangerously hard experience of COVID, further emphasising the point that we may all be in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And that's something that I guess has been echoed already through the conference today. We know our nurses are under pressure. A survey by the Nursing Times revealed that the negative impact of the coronavirus is having on our mental health of nurses. 9 in 10 nurses are feeling more stressed and anxious than usual. A third of 3,500 respondents said their mental health was bad or very bad. Their largest concerns were around the lack of PPE, contracting the virus themselves, and the health of family and friends. We're all worried about the situation around coronavirus and how it might affect our lives. It's not just a crisis in physical health, but as we've heard already today, in mental health too. Amidst all this, nurses and other key workers are still going to work when the rest of us are being told to stay at home and stay safe. Where should we begin to make sense of all of this? Where should we make sense of these current times? How can we move towards a positive systemic shift that leaves no one behind? These are really big questions for us to tackle. How about we start by taking a breath? Many of you will be familiar with the airplane analogy. Before takeoff, airline attendants will say, if the plane hits turbulence and oxygen masks fall down, place the mask on yourself before turning to help others. This is absolutely critical. If we don't, we're not going to be able to help anyone. Well, I guess we can say that we've all hit some turbulence, quite significant turbulence, and so we all need to take good care of ourselves, our bodies, and our minds. So in a moment, I'm going to invite you to take part in a short mindfulness exercise. I'm going to ask you to start by finding a comfortable position in your chair. I know it's difficult when we're kind of glued to screens, but if we could try and turn mobile phones on silent, minimize windows, anything that's going to help you to remain undisturbed. Take a few moments to settle and to ground your attention. Take a few breaths. Feel your body in your chair. Notice whatever is present in your mind and allow yourself to arrive fully to the moment at hand. If you're feeling unsettled or preoccupied, you might place your hand on your heart in a supportive way, comforting yourself in a way to say, I'm here for you. It's okay to feel how you feel at this moment. Just taking a moment to pause and be still. If you're comfortable to do so, then please close your eyes. When you're ready, taking a big deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And as you breathe out, just allowing the body to sink deeper into your seat, allowing thoughts to come and go. Just imagining a steady flow of warm sunlight flowing down through the body, dissolving any tension, any discomfort as it begins to fill the body. Starting with your toes, moving up through the feet and the legs, being filled with sunlight. The qualities of warmth, space and ease as it continues to travel up through the body, up past the waist, to the back and the stomach. It's as though it just washes away any discomfort. This warm glow just continues up through the chest and the back, into the shoulders and down the arms, all the way down to your hands and into your fingers. A sense of relief in the body and stillness in the mind as it continues to travel up through the neck and throat, into the head and face, all the way down to the very top of the body, till there's nothing other than a sense of stillness remaining. And now just gently bringing your attention back to the body and slowly blinking open your eyes. Okay. So, having taken this moment to pause and reflect, I'd now like to ask you to really consciously switch your attention and your awareness to thinking about your routines, your daily routines. In what ways could you make choices to take better care of yourselves and others? At South London and Maudsley, we've developed the Managing Stress MOT to support staff to take notice in this way. And for those of you, I just thought I'd take a moment, for those of you who might not be familiar with the MOT, in the UK, it's a way that we have to take our vehicles once a year to get checked to see, it's basically the vehicle health, check on things like its emissions and so on. So it's like that yearly check-in. So this is a yearly, well, hopefully not yearly check-in, a daily check-in for staff to do with themselves in the same way that we might with our car on a yearly basis. It includes tools to support our staff to check in with their health and well-being. And a PDF of this resource will be circulated to all delegates. So do take the time to have a look through. Hopefully there's some helpful resources in there for you. So the wheel that's on your screen at the moment represents all the areas we know to support good stress management. And actually some of these will be really familiar from some of the things we've heard Dennis speaking about today. Through the MOT, you can rate yourself 0 to 10 and how well you think you're doing in each of these domains. For example, so I might score myself an 8 on exercise because I've been really, since Christmas, trying to make the most of all the online exercise classes and apps that are available. And actually, I'm really noticing the positive impact it's having on my mental health and well-being. But I probably would score myself a 3 on taking breaks. Because I can often find myself in back-to-back meetings on Zoom or on Teams with little respite from the screen. And that's something I know I need to work on because it really makes me feel exhausted at the end of the day. So one thing I might do is propose to my team that all 1-hour meetings are reduced to 50-minute meetings, which would give that 10-minute break to have a bit of movement in between, or just to go and get a cup of tea or just have a stretch. So after you complete your MOT, you can explore the wheel and think about, okay, where am I doing well? But also, where do I need to improve? You and only you can decide on the changes that you need to make to reduce stress. But we are confident that everybody will need to make some changes because stress management is an ongoing human challenge. None of us are perfect. So we started this session with a mindfulness exercise, and mindfulness is definitely one of the tools, if you find it helpful, that you can add into your self-care kit. During a period when stress and fear are running high, there are also other strategies that we could use, and these are just a few suggestions that you might want to try out. So what about creating a space in your day just for you? How often do you do that? How often do you create a space where you can just check in with yourself? So really, really wanting you to think about how you can take time throughout your day to pause and notice what's happening within and around you. Try to be curious and non-judgmental with whatever shows up as you consider what you're feeling and what you might need in that moment. Acknowledge the turbulence. Our society tends to specifically reward heroic efforts that show that we can continue to perform at the same level while keeping up a brave face. Many people are struggling to work full-time remotely while simultaneously caring full-time for their family at home. Those who continue to work on the front line may feel the need to overload their schedules or commit too much at work. Again, check in with yourself. With so much news and instructions flying around about what to do and how to do it, take time to actually listen to what your body and mind needs in that moment. During such frantic times, we may tend to ignore acknowledging the loss of the way things were. We forget to mourn or grieve or simply express our sadness about not being able to socialise, see a close friend, attend a favourite exercise class, interact with neighbours or family, or worship collectively. Grant yourself the time and space to acknowledge your loss. This can also help you stay grounded with the current state of life. Balance your mental intake. This one's super important and one I know I need to pay attention to as well. Before you know it, you can be watching the news all the time and having the news apps pinging up on your phone, and you can kind of feel a little bit out of control of that, out of control of the information that's flooding you. So just think about how you might balance your mental intake. Yes, it's important that we know what's going on, but it's also important that we're not sort of overwhelmed by information overload. There's a lot happening in the world. And it's easy to feel like you need to be constantly connected in order for us not to miss out on what's happening. And yes, staying informed is helpful, but just be careful not to overwhelm yourselves. Allow yourself to physically, mentally, and emotionally check out on a regular basis. Just completely disconnect. Intentionally create shutdown time in your schedule. Take time to unplug and focus on the things that are uplifting or soothing. I know people, for example, who've turned off the automatic alerts on their phone from various news apps and have found that helpful and remain in control of when they get that information. So it's just something to think about. Practice pausing. So whether using mindfulness or taking deep breaths, taking a moment to pause can help you center you back to the present moment when stress and anxiety are high. NHS staff have been given free access to a number of wellbeing apps from now until the end of March this year to support mental health and well-being. So those of you who can might want to try those out. There's some really helpful mindfulness meditation apps, for example, Calm and Headspace, which can help release tension and center you back in the now. We know this already, and we've heard this already today as well, but obviously fueling your body with healthy food is super important. In times like this, nutrition and healthy eating can easily fall to the wayside, but it's important, probably, one of the most important things for us to remember that it's really, really, really key to think about what's fueling us. We've had increased physical and mental stress, and healthy eating is vital to support our immune systems to stave off illnesses and recuperate faster if we do fall ill. Move your body. We're all spending less time commuting and running errands or engaging in activities. Even if you don't have time for your usual workout, getting just 15 minutes of physical activity every day can really help. So take the stairs, walk the dog, try that yoga app, jog with your children as they bike. Those extra steps really do help. Prioritize sleep. Our bodies need sufficient sleep in order to function. Hold your sleep time sacred as an important part of your self-care. It's really tempting, I know it is, because I'm guilty of this too, to stay up an extra few minutes to watch that show, check out your social media, play games on your phone, but don't. Your sleep is a critical part of restoring your mind and body and recharging for the next day. Find ways to stay connected socially and use your supports. Now is the time to be activating your support networks if you haven't done already. Find ways to keep connected. Online choir groups, family FaceTime calls. There are lots of really wonderful ideas actually in that self-care schedule that you might want to call on. Ask for emotional and practical support when you need it. And remember, if things are getting too much, there are services available to help you. And there's some information about that in the pack that's being circulated. Okay. So just one more point. So there's some ideas for outside of work. Obviously, inside of work, some of us are still working frontline, and it's really important to think quite specifically about these as well. So just to briefly take you through a few ideas here about how you can think about looking after yourself at work. If you're going on shift, do take some time before your shift to check in with yourself. Mentally prepare by working through a readiness checklist. So this could include things like, for example, literally, it sounds very simple, but can really help. Just taking 6 deep breaths to slow your heart rate and put your body in a calm, ready state before going on shift. Bring to your awareness any negative thoughts or assumptions that are running through your mind. Because we know that imagining the worst can often really fuel anxiety. Instead, allow yourself to name those worries and those troubles and think, okay, I'm going to tackle these, but for now I need to go into my shift. Leave those worries behind, maybe write them down, write a list, say them out loud, shut them in your locker, whatever's going to help. And if you enjoy mindfulness or relaxation, then this might be a good time to practice some of those activities. Check in with your mind and your colleagues. Take your breaks. Let's go to that one first. Take your breaks. So sometimes it's really tempting to work right through. I'm sure lots of us have skipped breaks in our time just to get the job done, especially if the environment's really pressured. And it feels like there's a real increase in pressure to get things done, or you're short-staffed. But taking a break is important and can allow you time to rest and recuperate, even if it's just for a little while. Don't feel guilty. It's not a luxury at all. You're entitled to take that time. And also, even if you think, you find that hard to do for yourself, think about the fact that it's for your patient's safety as well as yours. So take your breaks. Check in with your mind and your colleagues. So make a point of regularly pausing to focus on how you're all doing. You could complete a staff support plan for your team, for example, or think about using a buddy system. So this is something that's been used some of our teams at SLAM. And essentially what it includes is team members are paired up in order to check in on each other's welfare during a shift. There's actually really strong evidence that buddy systems help to build team resilience and to protect staff's mental health and well-being. Buddied up staff get to know each other better, and therefore they're better placed to identify if something changes. So, for example, if one of your colleagues is a bit quieter than usual, perhaps, or more irritable, and within that developed relationship context, it's then easier to point out if something feels different, and you're less likely to just accept I'm fine in response to asking the question, are you okay? Buddy systems can also really support these stress management ideas. So for example, if one of you has said, right, tonight I'm going to go home and I'm going to take my dog for a walk, it'll be a brisk walk, and the other one says, I'm going to go home and have a nice relaxing bubble bath, you can actually check in with each other the next day if these things have happened. Look after your body during your shift. So the measures you need to take to keep yourself and your patients safe and protected are probably forefront in your mind at the moment, but don't neglect other aspects of your physical health too. For example, it's not always practical or easy to eat well, but prepping meals and healthy snacks before a shift or at the beginning of the working week can really help us to eat well, feel energized, and also to correct any nutrients for taxing shifts. It's just as important to stay hydrated before, during, and after shifts. And when you do manage to get breaks, try to catch up on a bit of sleep where you can. Think about your work-life balance. Working long shifts is such a challenging and fast-paced environment can leave you exhausted. Perhaps you're also trying to shop during supermarket priority hours. It makes it more important than ever to take care of yourself by doing something you enjoy sometimes too. Home life has transformed for most of us. Think about ways to take some time for yourself in this new environment. Build in opportunities to do things that relax you and make time to stay in contact with those you care about. And finally, leave work at work. I know it's not always easy, but we have developed, like on the screen now, you can see a going home checklist. This has been developed within the NHS, and teams have reported it to be really helpful just to stick one of these literally on the exit door, so people can check it as they leave. And if you'd like a copy of this post, I'm more than happy to share this as well. Please make use of it. Because the fact is, shifts are likely to be tough and traumatic experiences do happen, perhaps especially in times like this. So having a going home checklist that you do before you leave the building can help you switch from work mode to home mode. So this would include things such as taking a moment to think about the shift, acknowledge one thing that was difficult and take any learning that was needed, and then let that go. Also consider 3 things that went well on your shift. Check in on your colleagues before you leave, and also on yourself. Are you okay? Do you know who you can talk to if things get a bit much? Your senior team should be there to support you. Choose an action that signals the end of your shift. So it might be as simple as changing your clothes, or it might be that you've got a going home playlist on Spotify, music that's uplifting, whatever works for you, but something that helps to punctuate the end of work and going home. And then switch your attention to home and think about, okay, I've got a real pack now of all these things that are going to be good for me. What am I going to do to rest and recharge? So just a reminder, in case you've forgotten, you are important. You are super important. And sometimes, it is hard to recognise we need to make changes. We can prefer to think instead, I'm okay, because it would be yet another burden to have to make changes to look after ourselves on top of anything else. Unfortunately, if we don't do this, then we can get exhausted, stressed, and worn out. So let's take this as an opportunity to become more self-aware and make positive choices to take better care of ourselves and each other. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all you are doing.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Winter. That is very useful information that you have provided to most of us. And most of my colleagues who have attended this forum can really apply those in workplaces. I hope our attendees have taken down notes from such a very detailed presentation. 9 over 10 nurses are feeling anxious and also due to lack of PPE and contracting the virus. I mean, we're also scared to affect this with our family and friends. Looking at the presentation as well, the MOT is very helpful. It and also managing stress is highly important for us healthcare workers. Take care of yourself so you have space to care for others. That statement was has totally struck me. As a nurse manager, is it is important for my mental health to be good in order for me to become the support system of my staff. There are days wherein everything is already too much to handle. But again, as what Dr. Winter has said in her presentation, practice pausing and recenter ourselves again. Activating support network is vital, as what the quotation is saying, no man is an island. So thank you to the power of social media. We are able to interact with our loved ones and our friends anywhere in the world. But again, nothing can beat the face-to-face meetings. And we have to be excited and look forward to that once this pandemic is over. Now, Tracy, I think we are going to the interactive part of our session. I am sure most of our attendees here have questions directed to our speakers. Do you have anything that's listed in the chat box?
I'm just running on it. Can see one question from Sir JJ. Um, Sorry, it's my computer being being slow. He asks, sorry, I'm here. How can we encourage an upset colleague to accept what's going on? Do you think just leave it for now will help that person? I think Sir Dennis can help with this question. Is that all right, Sir Dennis? I, you're muted,
I've
Sir Dennis.
unmuted myself. Thank you, guys. Yes, thanks for that, Tracy. I was reading that I was reading Sir JJ's question earlier because I think it's always um really difficult for all of us. As I said earlier, this is something really new for all of us. And I know I also mentioned we are in the same storm, but we're not on the same boat. We are all experiencing the pandemic, but our previous experiences, our current life situation, and even plans for the future has changed and will always affect how we respond to everything that's going on around us. So if there's someone or a friend, a colleague, a family member who may be in denial or angry about the situation, I think the first thing that we can do is just to offer ourselves and, you know, let them know that we are available for them. We can't affect change on others. We can't we also can't tell them what to do, but we can always make ourselves available for them and support them in the best way, or that they will be able to appreciate it. Just offer ourselves and let them know that we are available if they wanted to talk to us. I hope that makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. No, but it doesn't help if the person don't accept any help, really, isn't it? Like you don't respond to calls. It just makes you worried, and the whole team is really become very worried about the particular person because you felt that obviously why am I being redeployed and the others are not?
Okay.
But obviously there are reasons
Mm. And that's also
why.
yeah, we can only reach out, isn't it? We can't force them to respond to us. But I think
Yeah.
it's important that we have, knowing that we have done our bit in reaching out to them and offering the time to them. So
Okay.
if they're not ready to talk to us, there's nothing really,
Yeah. Okay.
unfortunately, we can't do about it.
Sure. And then the problem is obviously the effect of that is to our other colleagues because sorry, other colleagues have also contacted the person, text how she is. So I think this is a psychological warfare, as I described. She makes us everyone guilty, if you know what I mean.
Mm,
And people become agitated, and I just don't know how to manage it. Really, that's the thing.
Maybe, we can ask this person's or other close friends to reach out to her. If they won't listen to you, then maybe you can ask some of her friends to reach out to her without giving any information or details of what's going on, just to ask, maybe, can you check on so and so? I've tried to send her a message today, she didn't respond. I'm just wondering if
Okay.
she will respond if you were the one who sent her the text message, and see if that will do the trick.
I was about to ask for a prescription from you.
You have to be registered in my surgery.
Because the close friend as well, she just deassociate herself from the world at the moment, to be
Mm.
honest. That's the only. All right. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Sir JJ.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question. Next one, I think we can redirect this question to Mr. Oliver Soriano. It was just a question sent to May. What do you think is the best way to respond to senior managers who are implementing new changes in the workplace when the staff is already stressed out with the ongoing pandemic?
I think this is one of the most challenging situation that not only the managers but also frontline staff are actually dealing with. Because I think Tracy did highlight a while ago that like at the current stage that we're in, things are changing in so fast that like we cannot pace ourselves anymore. I think often what Dr. Winter just mentioned is to kind of like have those checklists on how we can actually be able to support our colleagues. And often supporting our colleagues is mostly about like giving the right information and actually identifying the actions that is to be done. Because often managers tends to actually be pushed with deadlines, and what tends to happen is like you have to actually just go on your whim to do the action, but rather speak to your team to actually explain the reason behind it, to actually have that open conversation of what the team feels about it, because like it's always a pressure between what the organization requires to actually perform. At the same time, you as a team manager or a leader in any networks or company, it's important to actually have that conversation and acknowledge the feeling that your colleagues will actually be facing with. So those are the things that like I think people have to be mindful about, because as a manager or as a team leader, it's always the pressure that you have to go through, and yet like you're looking after other people. At the same time, you have to always make sure to look after yourself.
Thank you very much, Sir Oli. I think we have a few more questions here, Tracy.
The next questions that I am looking right now is somehow related to our normal use of technology. How can we break the habit of regularly checking our emails from the moment we open our eyes? Maybe that's how the question is. Um, Even on weekends, because thinking that your workload will then eventually pile up on Monday or the next working day that you are back in the office or on the hospital itself. Um, can you help us out to answer this one, Dr. Helen Winter, if that's okay?
Yes, although I'm probably one of the worst people at this and checking my emails quite a lot. I guess, why do we do it? So I think we're doing it to get some reassurance. We're doing it to kind of reduce anxiety that I'm going to check and everything's going to be okay. But actually, you have no control over what emails are coming through. And people work all hours, especially now, are much more technology driven. So I actually think this comes down to your own personal ability to kind of put down boundaries. The list will always grow. It's never going to go away. So it's almost coming to a place of acceptance that emails will come even if you're checking or not checking. So actually, perhaps it's about getting yourself to kind of role model best practice and hope that others will follow suit. So I can think of some senior people in the trust that I work in who've actually put messages under their email signature that says, I will not respond, this mailbox will not be checked outside of 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. And that's a very clear message from senior colleagues, and it's actually respected. I think it's some people do work at all hours. I know my boss kind of works, you know, it feels like 24/7, but the expectation is not necessarily there for me to respond within that time. So I think it's for people to just be kind to themselves and say, actually, what we were talking about before, you deserve a break, you deserve, you know, time to switch off. So actually turn the alerts off on your phone if they're on when you're not at work, and be really boundaried and not responding to emails outside of those hours. And if something like a note like that helps, then that's great. And eventually, you know, when you get into the swing of things, you'll notice you're less anxious. It's going to go down. It's not going to kind of, you're not going to be always wanting to check. But I think it's for you to kind of make those first steps first.
Thank you, Dr. Winter. I myself is guilty of that, regularly checking emails. One thing I did before, I just uninstalled the Outlook application on my phone, and that helped. But again, I have to reinstall it back. There is another question that was sent to me. It says, often others aim to help and offer interventions when maybe it is just time to unplug. How do we make it clear it is downtime? Can I redirect this to Sir Dennis, please?
I think that's the thing, just like what Helen said, isn't it, as well? Um, yeah, for my message to everyone listening, if I don't respond, that means I am unplugged. That's yeah. I have one of the most important things for me as well is that I have a separate work email account, which is what we all have, isn't it? So I don't check my NHS emails when I'm not working. So I only work 4 days a week. So don't expect me to check my emails in between or most especially on weekends, not unless it's really, really important. I think that's also has become human nature for all of us in the last few years, most especially, isn't it? I think they even created an acronym for it. Um, FOMO, fear of missing out. It's like almost the first thing that you grab as soon as you wake up is your phone and check on your social media. But honestly, something that you also need to remember as well is that you can't give what you don't have. So if you didn't have a good night's sleep, if you don't feel well rested, then you can't support your colleagues and team members, most especially if you manage a busy team. You know there will always be a time to catch up on things, and you being on cue and switched on 24/7 is never going to be really beneficial for you in the long run. So learn to be able to unplug and switch off.
Thank you very much, Kuya Dens or Sir Dens. That was a really lovely sentiment, and that actually makes you more focused to yourself. I hope that helps everyone for that question. I'm going to another question from PNA UK for Sir Ollie, if that's okay. I believe you can answer this one because your personal is very soft spoken and articulate. How can we encourage another person to open and talk when they don't want to, but clearly they really need help?
Right. In our day of work in mental health, Helen and I are actually in the same trust, and these are the kind of like issues or challenges that we actually deal with. I think I'm just gonna put it on a step-by-step process, like acknowledging when someone is not actually able to talk, then give that time that person to actually reflect and think about of what's happening, because you cannot actually push anyone or convince anyone to actually start their feeling to express their feeling when they're not ready to express it. I think as an individual, either you're a friend or you're a colleague, the best action that I always put forward is to kind of like say to that individual, like, look, I'm here for you. I can understand the feeling that you're going through, but I'm actually available once you're ready to speak to me. I think it's that giving an opportunity to that person that like you're available when the other person is ready to speak to you, because otherwise it will not go anywhere if we constantly or continuously asking that person of like, why are they not talking, or why they don't want to actually express themselves. It's their own emotion, So they're going through to their own ways of coping in their emotions. So it's important that we acknowledge that individually we've got a different ways of actually coping and dealing with problems. So respecting the individual's way of coping and be compassionate. I think that's a more important one. Be compassionate to understand that like they will have a different journey as to what the journey that you will be going through. So it's a matter of like understanding that individual and then allowing them to kind of um, have the time to reach out when they're actually ready and free to do that.
Thank you very much, Sir Oli. I think that's really true, being compassionate. And I believe that's innate for us, for all nurses, regardless you are from mental health, general health, or whatever specialty you are in the nursing field. Being compassionate is really our greatest attribute. Um, there is another question that I would just like to read. COVID had actually affected adults and children as well. In the simplest way that you can, what can you advise for parents dealing with their children at home on top of working and already been having a stressful work situations? Best examples for these our NHS and key workers. They specifically want Dr. Helen Winter to answer this, please. Thank you.
Yeah, we go. Um, yeah, so I suppose there's kind of two things in that, isn't it? It's kind of the stress of having childcare demands at home, but also supporting children to understand what's going on. So there's quite a lot perhaps in that question. I think if it's something about balancing childcare and being a parent and the stresses of work, I think the first thing I'd say is be honest with your employer, whoever your employer might be, or your manager. Having very honest conversations with them about the varying demands is important, because I think sometimes we can assume that they know what our home situation is, but it might not necessarily be the case. Even if it's your workplace or your role can't be particularly flexible, there may be some increased understanding about your situation, which will hopefully help how you're feeling, I guess. And then I think it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. It's a lot of that good stuff that we know already. So the importance of routine, for example. Routine's really, really key at the best of times. But if you've got lots of competing demands, what you need to prioritize when is going to be super important, especially if there's homeschooling, if there's all the usual parenting routines that need to be taken care of. And perhaps thinking about what needs to be prioritized when. It's stuff that you don't usually need to use on a day-to-day basis, but having schedules and agreeing on schedules, and also empowering and almost kind of giving that to our children as well, to help them take responsibilities for various bits at home, blocking out time that you can actually give to your children, and that's you can kind of give that without focusing on work. That can be kind of guilt-free, because this section of your time is going to be focused on work, and kind of being clear and communicating that, I suppose, is super important. And I guess the boundaries that we spoke about before, that we kind of alluded to when we thought about work emails, like where are your boundaries, where is work and where is home? If you're working from home, I know that can be more of a challenge to find that space, but doing something that kind of clearly delineates when you've finished work and when you're kind of now going to rest and recharge at home or spend time with your children feels really important. But also just being kind to yourself. These are really unusual circumstances. This isn't the normal day to day. This isn't, none of us are in a space that we're used to. So it's also doing all the stuff to be kind to yourself as well, and making sure that you're looking after yourself, and I mean that in every sense, mind, body, spirit, so that you're able to kind of be there for yourself, for your work, and for your children as you need to. So using all those great ideas that we've heard about today, for example.
Thank you, Helen, for that reminder, because actually I am a mother myself. So really, I tell to myself, I leave everything behind. I know I'm just gonna rest. Let it be dirt, not dirty. I'll just clean it later, kind of thing, and I'll just focus to myself. But yes, my house is clean, so don't worry about it. I just have to acknowledge one of our participants, Lizette Hartwood. She also said on how to help us to break that habit of using our cell phones or laptops. Um, she she set aside a day where she doesn't look at any screens. So it has been really nice for her. So I think I need to do that as well. And for Mom Thelma, thank you very much for your suggestion as well. It is a decision you have to make for yourself, not check mails in the rest of the day. So that is absolutely right. It always just begins with you. No matter how the people of your surroundings says, put your phone off or your screen. If you're just too addicted to holding it, you'll be there. So I'm going to pass on to Jan. Is that all right, Jan? I'm gonna pass it on to
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Tracy. I just want to highlight a few statements before we wrap up. Sir Dennis have quoted, "Help can come in different ways. Talking is good, but some people does not cope well with talking." That is really true. And also, reaching out is important, but we also need to respect other people's decisions and wishes. Right. So I believe our speakers have answered all the relevant questions, and thank you so much for providing your time and expertise for today's topic. It is very timely and relevant to the current struggles we are facing daily in our workplace, in our personal lives. On that note, our association will continue to deliver a wide range of professional, educational, and social activities as essential and necessary and according to the needs of the time and the situation. The certificate for this event will be posted in the chat box. And also, if you want more CPD units, there will be a link that will be posted as well in the chat box that contains 5 hours of CPD that is via PNA UK. The presentation resources will also be sent automatically to your emails after you have completed the feedback forms. So I'm really requesting everyone to please complete that in order for us to improve more on what's next. Right. So for every activity, normally if it's we're all together, we would go up and we all have photo taking. But again, we are in the power of the virtual world that is Zoom. So I am encouraging everyone. We are gonna finish in about 5 minutes. If you can turn your cameras on for our photo documentation, if you're not comfortable, that's completely fine. But those who wish to be included, you are very much welcome to open your cameras. We'll just take a quick photo and we can wrap up.
Who's doing the photo? Is Mike doing the photo?
Going in
Nakasmile na ako. I don't know who's taking the photo.
3, 2, 1. Okay, 1 second. Hold. Let me just put that in the box. And another one. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. And the link for the certificate will be in the chat box. Over to you, facilitators.
Thank you, Sir
Okay.
Michael. Sir Michael, by the way, is our founder for PNA UK. Tracy, would you like to invite everyone for our social media networks, please?
Yes, absolutely. We have reached the end for today's webinar, and I hope you gained something as a takeaway as we combat this coronavirus. Then again, message us anytime for any queries. Um, Please visit our website at www.mypnauk.org. Sorry, that is www.mypnauk.org, or simply visit us on our Facebook and Twitter account, Philippine Nurses Association UK or PNA UK. Join us in our membership because it's free registration and you can grow your network and sometimes be an influencer. So just stay in touch with us for, like Jan said, that there would be more webinars to come in the future.
Thank you. And a final message from all of us from here at PNA UK. We are advocating everyone in the UK to have your vaccine against COVID 19. Protect yourself, protect your colleagues, and protect your patients. You will be receiving your certificates on your email as well for today's event. Once again, thank you and stay safe. Thank you, everyone.
Have a lovely evening and good night in the Philippines. Thank you, everyone.
Gandang gabi po sa mga nasa Pilipinas. Thank you for joining us.
Maraming salamat po. And Dr. Helen, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Helen.
Thank you very much po.
Everyone.
Thank you, everything. You know everything.
Salamat po. Hi, Ma'am Charis.
I'm not lagi.
Hi!
Ma'am Rina.
Hi, kamusta ka? Kamusta ka na?
Okay naman po.
Lakas,
But nice to see you.
lakas naman ng music. Hindi kami makapag-chismisan.
Oo nga.
Hindi ako na-aware may party tayo.
Well
Party
done,
na.
guys. Thank you.
Si Ma'am Shelo, we miss you.
Oh, Shelo, magpakita ka naman.
Pakita ka naman.
Hi, Ma'am Shana. Okay,
Uy, pakita naman ng camera ng ano.
hold on.
Hindi ko sila makita.
Ayaw nila, Tisha.
Ito ba nandyan? Hold on.
Si JJ.